We like to criticize our political parties for their contentious, often confrontational behavior, but the upside of that equation is that parties provide an essential structure for organizing the executive and legislative branches of government. This can be clearly seen when there is a dramatic shift in party control, particularly at the national level. In the U.S. Congress, when an election turns the political tables on either the Democrats or Republicans, there is a shakeup in everything, from offices to legislative agendas. In 2001, after one of the most contested elections in American history, George W. Bush was sworn in as the 43rd President of the United States. With the House of Representatives narrowly held by Republicans and an evenly divided Senate, Bush promised to govern from the middle. But when the new president played hardball with Congress to pass a very conservative agenda, Vermont Senator Jim Jeffords made a stunning announcement.
In order to best represent my state of Vermont, my own conscience and principles I have stood for my whole life, I will leave the Republican Party and become an independent.
Jeffords' defection gave Democrats a majority in the Senate, along with all the powers and privileges that entailed.
Senator Jeffords' decision obviously produces some changes. The historic 50-50 Senate now becomes history itself. This will be America's first 50-49-1 Senate.
The difference of a single vote in the Senate is the difference to create the agenda, to call legislation forward, to appoint conference committees. This will significantly alter the legislative landscape in Washington and create a very different environment for George W. Bush.
White House correspondent Dana Milbank has reported on how Jeffords shifted the balance of power between the Bush administration and Congress.
What I think people may not have paid attention to is how important it is to have committee chairmen, how important it is to have the power of subpoena, the power to investigate. That is really where the Democrats have benefited here.
The shift was most dramatic on the Governmental Affairs Committee, where Democrat Joseph Lieberman took over the chairmanship from Republican Fred Thompson. As Senator Lieberman's Director of Communications, Leslie Phillips experienced the switch to majority status firsthand.
When you're in the majority, you can determine what your agenda is. You call the shots and you determine what issues you want to investigate, whether you want to investigate, whether you want to hold hearings, what sort of focus the committee is going to have. And that is very important because that is using the taxpayers' money and the taxpayers' trust to look at issues that are of concern to them, that you think are of concern to them.
As everyone knows, the Governmental Affairs Committee has begun an investigation into foreign campaigns.
In 1997, Senator Thompson used his power as chair of the Governmental Affairs Committee to investigate the financing of Bill Clinton's second presidential campaign. But in 2002, the new chairman, Lieberman, turned the committee's attention to a matter that many Republicans would have preferred to avoid: the Bush administration's ties to the failed energy giant Enron. As Congress soon learned, the company had inflated its revenues by hiding debt in over 800 phony partnerships. What made this corporation's implosion even more dramatic was its ties to Washington and the White House.
Enron was extremely well connected politically. They gave a large number, millions of dollars, to Democrats and Republicans, but particularly Republicans. They were the single largest contributors to George W. Bush over the years as governor of Texas and during his presidential run. This all occurred before the Jim Jeffords switch, when the Republicans controlled both houses. You can pretty much rest assured that congressional committees would not be looking at all at the White House and their role involving Enron, involving energy policy, involving the environment.
Enron was ranked as the 7th largest corporation in America.
After investigating the failure of government regulators and collecting literally tons of evidence, the committee turned to the Bush administration for missing pieces of the Enron puzzle.
It became clear to the senator that the White House was stonewalling and delaying and was never going to hand over the information willingly. And so he decided, reluctantly, I think, to take this issue of the subpoena to a committee vote.
The Jeffords switch not only gave Democrats a majority on the Senate floor, but also on every committee. All 9 Democrats on government affairs voted for the subpoenas, overruling the committee's 8 Republicans.
The subpoenas will be issued by the committee.
2 weeks later, the White House gave in and agreed to deliver 2,000 pages of documents on condition that they be read only by select staffers and be kept in a locked room with an alarm.
Had the Jeffords switch not occurred, he could not have issued those subpoenas, and there would be no. I mean, there may well have been an investigation of Enron, but it certainly wouldn't have involved the White House. So it's that's where you have this huge tidal shift, more than any piece of legislation. It's really in the power to investigate that this changed everything.
The day after the subpoena vote, the Senate Democrats and a sole independent, Jim Jeffords, gathered on the west front of the Capitol to commemorate the historic change in power. Thomas Jefferson once said,